One of my main issues with ADHD is that I essentially do not always live in reality. So that's overly filtering out the negative, so living in this dream world, being overly positive, having frankly absurd time estimates. We all know that we think we can do anything in 3 minutes, but we actually can't. And impulsivity. We create this kind of whole world in which we live, but actually the reality around us doesn't really correlate. So I read the book Essentialism, a modern classic of self-help and self-improvement, to see, does this withstand exposure to the ADHD brain, and what, if anything, can we learn from it? But before we look at any of that, I want to address a point, because I basically go into most self-help, self-improvement, productivity kind of books thinking nice in principle, but I've got actually a long history of, in theory, learning a lesson, realizing that I've made a mistake a lot of times, but then in the moment when it comes up, I don't remember that, and for the umpteenth time I'm left trying to get ready in 3 minutes when actually I need 30 minutes. So you would be very right asking these questions. Why do we keep repeating these mistakes? And what can we do to overcome that pattern? We all generally know that we're wired different, to use a rather unscientific term, but let's make that a little bit more scientific. Now, what we as ADHDers have is not necessarily a bad recall, though sometimes we might do, but what our issue in this case is having a weaker prospective memory. Now, what that actually means in practice is that we don't remember to remember. Something that we do every day, maybe, let's say take medicine. Now, that isn't data recall, that is recalling that we have to do something, so remembering to remember to take your medication. Now, that is something with which we definitely have problems. And when you couple this, let's take a second example here of, this is a classic, staying up later than we know we really should. We're going to couple that prospective memory issue with our tendency to have immediate pleasure or satisfaction outweigh long-term benefits and what we know that we should be doing. So on one hand, we're maybe not remembering to ask ourselves any questions as to, should I be going to bed at this point? And even if we do, then we're thinking, no, actually I do want to stay up and play computer games. I'll deal with the fact that I went to bed at 3 a.m. tomorrow when I woke up at 6 a.m. And this all ties in with one key theme that I picked out of this book, and it's around choice. The author noted at the start of this book that when the history of the world is written, it's not going to focus in on tech and e-commerce and all of the things that we might think of first when we think of the last 30 or 40 years. What he reckons is that it's going to be about, this was the first time in human history where we had basically unlimited choice. But I think from my lifetime, from going from having channels 1, 2, 3, 4 and then a fuzzy channel 5 to now I can watch anything anytime I want. Careers have changed. We don't typically go into this one career for life. I've had 3 already and I'm only 36. More kinds of establishments and shops are open, and they're open for longer. We have just basically the world at our fingertips and almost no limitation as to how and when we can engage in that. And this is something of a dream and a nightmare for the ADHD brain, because we do love variety and novelty and possibility. However, we end up like a kid in a candy shop and we don't know how to make a decision. It doesn't necessarily do our brains any good. Interestingly, he also noted something that I repeat again and again on this channel, that the word priority stayed singular for 500 years in the history of our language before it then started being used in any sort of plural sense, and that is in relatively recent memory. And that doesn't help our brains much either. Now, bringing this back to what can we actually take out of this? We know what our brains do, I've just described it, and we know that we have almost no filter or no limit on what we can let our brains attach to. I know that many of my clients, and certainly I recognize this too, that I end up in this sort of spiral. I just spiral and get more and more and more and more sort of chaotic and frenzied as I'm trying to work towards the end of some sort of project or just task or whatever it is that I'm doing. And this is visible from the outside. I'm getting tenser and tenser and tenser, and my ability to sort of see beyond that gets less and less and less, and I become more and more and more blinkered. So how do we stay essential? How do we stay balanced and focused on the important things in this pluralistic, this variety-rich life? Now, a way that I find that helps, and lots of my clients find this as well, that if you have someone in your life with whom you live, whatever relation to you that they are, whether it's family, partner, flat or housemate, a lot of times having someone who is aware that you might tend to spiral and get more chaotic like this, and have them agree to just step in with a gentle prompt that you might want to start kind of wrapping up, that can actually be a huge game changer. I had a conversation with my partner and we established that there is this sort of ground, sort of fundamental expectation that I don't work beyond a certain hours on certain days, and that has stuck. So every time I get into something that I know is going to be a bit of a danger area, because I can just get sucked into editing these videos or going down a rabbit hole and researching something, I always set a timer. I tell myself that I'm not going to work beyond 7 o'clock as it usually is, and set reminders. I'm going to come back to the word choice here, but in a different sense. I set reminders to ask me the question, what do you want to be doing at this point, and how do you want to be doing it? And almost never is the answer, I want to be doing this exactly the way I'm doing it. Usually it's, I want now to start prioritizing my relationship, I want to start prioritizing my well-being and not being super hyper-focused at midnight on some new obsession. Another part of this book that I found really interesting is that there was a lot of talk of play. Now, I think we could be pretty good at this generally as ADHDers, because we can find fascination and joy in most things. And whilst play was essentially noted in the world of business people who spend a lot of time doing really serious stuff, this absolutely applies for anyone. A lot of time we do get, again, blinkered. We just look at the path, but we don't see the scenery. And what happens when we allow ourselves to play is that it sparks creativity, it sparks more freeness and freedom in our lives. We are more connected with exactly what is going on in our brains, what we want. Whereas if we're blinkered and just in that hectic, crazy spiral, we're not thinking about what is our priority, what do we really want to be doing, and how do we want to be doing it. Play is a release from all of that. And when I say play again, I mean you can just be silly, play with your kids, go to an arcade, go have a walk in the woods and just like wander. Whatever play means for you, but the main thing is that it's not work and it's not goal orientated. I'm aware that we can maybe, again, ADHDers tend to lose the balance in this, so we do need to be careful. This is something that I found wasn't really addressed in the book, because it is through a neurotypical lens, and he's really thinking that when people play as these businessmen, there is this main drag back to being serious and being productive in the strict sense of the word, or the traditional or common sense of the word. Whereas we might just get stuck in and drawn into the play because, well, we're not necessarily great at shifting focus, shifting tasks, and it depends what the other thing we're going back to is. Are we trying to be focused and productive in something we're not that interested in? And just quickly, if you're liking this, if you're liking these videos, please give me a like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below if you want. And right, let's get back to it. So what are the things about our ADHD brains that, again, keep us from always getting the right balance here? We've got object permanence. We've got difficulty getting into sort of deep focus, deep work, and we have difficulty setting priorities. Everything just seems like a priority. Everything might seem new and shiny and exciting, and we actually just can't say which of these is the most important thing here. And whilst this wasn't said in the book, again, I'm putting the ADHD filter on this, what I realised that a lot of this is genuinely helpful, but we need to be as thoughtful and methodical as we can possibly be in order to get the most out of this. So while it might not fit fully with the spirit of play and freedom, if we ask ourselves in advance, will I need a time of play or just release today? The answer is almost always going to be yes. Whereas if by some miracle we think of it in the moment, we're 5 hours into work and suddenly out of nowhere we get this thought, maybe I should go and play in the broadest sense. Well, one, it's very unlikely that it's going to occur to us, and two, we might just not be able to see the wood for the trees, and we're much less likely to say, yes, I need some play time, some free time now. So if we schedule it in, and again using a reminder to pop up or lean on the people in our lives, then we're getting that balance. Now, the third part of this book, the third idea that really came and struck me as being important for us as neurodivergent people, is protect your asset. I know this is really hard for us because of the aforementioned points in this video, but it's something I've become really aware of just in my life anyway, that I need to protect myself. I need to start putting time and money aside to do things which are going to protect my well-being, my energy, my health, because if I can't work or just even enjoy life, then it's essentially a catastrophe. And of course, as people who are prone to our own type of burnout, so autistic ADHD burnout is more severe actually than neurotypical burnout, and it is harder to come back. It can very well be that you need a year or more to start feeling yourself again after a particularly pernicious bout of burnout. But of course, right, we have this constant overjudging of our own capability, like this overestimation of our own capability. We think we can do everything, but in reality we cannot do everything, not if we want to stay well and happy. Now, one thing that really stuck out for me in this book is really two words: luxury buffer. And I'm going to say it 3 more times so that it ingrains in your brain. Luxury buffer, luxury buffer, luxury buffer. And if you can have these 2 words in your mind whenever you're getting down to any kind of work or even play or task, anything that's going to take time, then that's going to be ideal. So you have one time, which is kind of what you think it's going to take, and then you add 30 to 40% of time on top of that. So actually, secret, you are probably going to end up taking all of that time far more often than not. There's countless studies that show when we are asked to judge how much time we need for something, or in other activities how much time we spend doing a certain thing, we are way off. We're often like 30 to 40% off, if not more. Now, in your diary, this should look like 2 overlapping segments. Let's say 5 hours to do this one task, but hopefully about 3 hours. And if you get it done in the 3 hours, the 2 hours is then given over in advance to play and free time. So bonus if you get it done in the 3 hours, so a little extra incentive, almost like a game, which is going to be fantastic for our brains. But if you don't, it's not had this catastrophic effect on your day because you've actually planned for it. So that's the third main takeaway from this book. I've got to say, of all of the books I've read about self-improvement and productivity and just being the best version of yourself, this is by far and away the best one I've ever read. So if you're going to read any of these books that come up on this channel, I would say start with Essentialism. I'll see you in the next video.